What's up, everybody? Welcome to the Canes Insight Daily Podcast, powered by Anijar and Levine Accident Attorneys. A lot to react to here. I get this text in pretty much all of my group chats here that follow the Canes. Apparently, On3 is saying, this is Andy Staples, great follow, Florida grad, saying that he thinks that the University of Florida is on a better trajectory than the Miami Hurricanes. Watch the video. We'll respond to that. We'll take your questions. Live chat on fire, as always. Like and subscribe to the show. First, I want to talk about some folks that are always on the solid trajectory. That is Anijar and Levine Accident Attorneys. If you or someone you care about has been injured in an accident, you could be entitled to significant compensation. Dial 1-800-747-FREE, 1-800-747-3733. Take back control of your life with Anijar and Levine. Pete, hop in.
What's going on, D?
Feeling good, man. I mean, excited to really talk about a finished product. And it's not finished because the portal is going to open back up in spring. There's going to be a lot of action in and out. You'll see who people get hurt, people emerge. A lot to learn about the team in spring. We'll be covering it every day. But now we know what this portal class looks like. Xavier Lucas is a Cane. He's here. Carson Beck is a Cane. He's here. Pretty much the entire class is here, aside from Bryce Fitzgerald, who doesn't graduate early because of his school. So the 2025 Hurricanes are in the building. We know what we're going to get. Excited to talk about it and kind of see the national reaction, right? Because we've been talking about it all week, off and on the air. You're seeing the preseason top 10s, the two early top 10s. Miami's been as high as 3. They've been as low as 23. The 23 was kind of an outlier. Usually they're in that top 10, top 12 range. But who put them at 23? The guys we're going to talk about here at On3, Andy Staples, Ari Wasserman. Again, I enjoy their show. I'm not trying to bash them, but maybe some Gator bias here. They think the Florida Gators are on a better trajectory than the team that humiliated them pretty badly there in the opener. 41-17 had the fans leaving early in the third quarter.
Yeah, this is the video we're talking about here. On3 has it. It's, like you said, Andy Staples and Ari Wasserman, I believe. But yeah, I mean, it's I don't agree with it necessarily. I think people are banking on the fact that Ward being gone and then just looking at what the defense was last year and just saying, well, Ward's gone and the defense was bad, so it'll be good. It'll be bad again. And the offense is not going to be anything near what it was because you're losing the most prolific quarterback in the country. And while that, there is some truth to that potentially, we understand it's going to be a completely different looking offense, but you have to expect the defense to be way, way better than it was there. And again, if you're Florida, none of this is like a thing if DJ Lagway doesn't hit to where you think he's going to hit, right, D? Like you're banking everything on Lagway being the guy. Yeah, if Carson Beck isn't healthy and something it goes wrong with his elbow, Miami's not in a fantastic situation either. But I feel better about the foundation that's been set with the run game that Miami has.
Yeah, by the way, the comments are going crazy, so I want to get them involved here before we jump into it. Heel, not a fan of Andy Staples. We got a little bit of people taking it as a joke. You have Martin Dubé, our boy, saying he's just about to go to bed out there in Botswana, joining us to talk about this ranking. James Kane says they call him On Cheeks for a reason. On3 is a bunch of clowns. Cafe 904. I mean, I like On3. I think they do a good job. But this is something that I've seen, and I struggle to understand it because I was there in Gainesville to watch what happened when Miami played Florida. And it goes so far beyond just the final score, which is, of course, a humiliating score if you're a Gator fan, 41-17. The fans were leaving early, booing their own team. It was quite an embarrassment. But what jumped out to me about that particular game was that the battle in the trenches was more lopsided than any single game on Miami's schedule aside from like Ball State. And even that's pushing it. Cam Ward did not get breathed on by the same Gator defensive line that On3 and these guys are hyping up. So unless these gentlemen took steroids mid-season, I have trouble seeing the physical advantage because it wasn't schematic. It wasn't like, something that we just caught them off guard with. They were getting blown off the ball. They were getting run over every time Miami chose to run the ball with power. And in terms of the passing game, it was complete and utter humiliation from Miami's offensive line, which, by the way, returns 4 starters, 5 if you include Ryan Rodriguez, who started that particular game against a Gator defensive line that not only got destroyed on that day, but actually lost 3 of their main players. So that's more than that because they lost the defensive tackle as well to the draft. So again, I struggle to see how that particular matchup has changed so much when the players have either stayed the same or in the Gators case, gotten worse.
Well, and then here's the thing to me, if you're looking at the Gators as well, Billy Napier didn't make a move at offensive coordinator. He's banking on himself being the guy calling the plays where there hasn't been any history there that he's had success as a play caller. So it's not just Lagway, right? Because Lagway, I think, is a phenomenal talent. And like, I think he has what it takes to be a stud, but there's more to it than just having the talent at quarterback. Do you have the piece around you, or is the play calling going to be good? I mean, I think Florida fans would tell you themselves they weren't necessarily a fan of the play calling at times, right? So, and this was a team that was 92nd in the country on third down, which we've seen that plague Miami over the years. Cam Ward helped that a lot this year, but the OC situation is not exactly perfect over there.
No, and Napier is not going to be tinkering with the setup. He already said it. And when it comes to Lagway, I'm a fan of Lagway. I actually think Lagway's the real deal. Physically gifted. He doesn't have the best accuracy right now, but because he throws it downfield so effectively, his yards per attempt is very high, right? So he might miss a lot of throws, but the throws he makes are big chunk plays. But because he's that type of quarterback, there's going to be a lot more variability in his play as opposed to like a Cam Ward where you're going to get high quality every single start. Lagway's very much a boomer bust passer. His completion percentage is low. His touchdown interception ratio, 12 TDs to 9 INTs, is very low. It's what makes him effective is those deep balls that he's able to hit, but it adds variability to his game. His offensive line comes back. This was one of the worst offensive lines in the SEC all the way up until the end. You do have Jake Slaughter, who's a good player, but this was a matchup that Miami completely dominated. Miami's defensive line, guys like Tyler Barron, they were considered disappointments in the latter half of the year, the ACC schedule. But in this game, they look like Reggie White because UF's offensive line was so poor. These are the same guys coming back. So here's the thing that I think people need to realize about the Florida Gators. Okay, we're going to talk about Miami's transfer portal class a little more in depth over the next week. But Miami's the 5th ranked portal class. 4th if you go by On3, which is the folks who made this video. Top 5 consensus portal class for the Miami Hurricanes. In terms of average ranking, number 2 to Oregon, meaning the average player in their class is a big-time player. Oregon is the only school that has a higher per-player average than Miami, and Oregon had less players. They're also number 1 team in the country for most of the year. Florida, which again, lost 5 games last year and got completely humiliated by Miami, their portal class, I had to scroll a couple times and load the page, 87th in the nation in the portal. Remember, we heard that they got Lagway. There's momentum. They're going to be doing a lot of work in the portal. 87th in the nation. 5 commits, 0 4-stars. They didn't get 1 blue chip transfer portal guy. 1 backup quarterback in that 5. You got a punter, I think, in that 5.
They wanted Poyser badly. We know that.
They wanted Poyser badly. They didn't get him. And then you look at what did they lose in the portal? They lost Kelby Collins to Alabama. They lost Jack Pyburn. These are defensive ends. Jack Pyburn to LSU. Justice Boone to Arkansas. And TJ Searcy to TAMU, to Texas A&M. So you're losing 4 edge rushers who, look, none of these guys were dominant. Tyreek Sapp was their best pass rusher. But these were guys that played and had enough talent to go to teams that are better than Florida. So, to lose those guys and not replace them is not a good thing. They did have a good recruiting class, but even their recruiting class, they finished 10th in the nation. It wasn't something spectacular. Miami finished 14th, and they wanted to fire everybody. They ended up getting a new recruiting coordinator. And the player average was identical between the 2 schools. So in Miami's worst year and the Gators' best year, there's not that much of a gap. And then if you go to the prior years, the Gators recruited terribly. So when you combine that with the ineffectiveness in the portal and the fact that we've seen these trenches match up and we've seen what the Gator trenches look like, and they looked, to me, below average ACC caliber. I was there in person. If you guys were there in person or on TV and saw it differently, let me know. But I think UF, I hope they keep getting this helium and keep getting higher and higher in the rankings. And I hope they stay ranked high when they play Miami, because Notre Dame is going to be a good team. It's going to be a tough opponent. If this UF team is ranked top 10, that's a gift to the Miami Hurricanes.
And to me, this is the most interesting part about this discussion, is that this isn't just us saying it. We saw some of the over-unders for win totals came out yesterday, and Florida early on here set at 6.5.
Yeah, for a team that's getting preseason top 10 hype. So that tells you the disconnect between, I think, reality and media, right? Because this is the money. This is the reality. This is consequences for the Axe. And they got him at 6.5. And I think that's accurate. I'm seeing comments, that Florida team that ended the year wasn't the same one that started the year. Well, look, Lagway was definitely an effective player and gave them a chance. But I think the reason their defense played better was because they weren't getting blocked by Miami's offensive line. I mean, it's the same guys. A lot of the guys that played well towards the end are gone anyways. They also lost Jakeem Jackson, one of their top corners, to LSU. So it's not like they added a ton of players that are huge impact guys that were hurt or whatever. It's pretty much the same guys. Tyreek Sapp, right? Tyreek Sapp had a really good year for him. Did Tyreek Sapp's name get called against the Hurricanes? I don't remember even seeing his jersey number. It was that dominant. So, yes, they played well against Ole Miss. They played well against LSU. LSU's offensive line is overrated. Ole Miss's offensive line is not that good. Ole Miss had a great team, and LSU had a great quarterback. But the offensive line that Miami had, and it's crazy because they played an SEC schedule, Florida did not play an offensive line the caliber of Miami. And I think usually you see the best offensive lines in the SEC, but this year, the offensive lines in the SEC I thought were abysmal, relatively speaking, to where they're usually at. Alabama's took a huge step back. LSU's was overrated, had some struggles. Georgia's was one of the worst Georgia offensive lines we've ever seen at Georgia. So this is not the SEC we're used to seeing it from an offensive line standpoint. And when you see Miami, which is a top 3 offensive line, I mean, I think Miami, Ohio State, and Notre Dame are the top 3 offensive lines in the country last year. When you look at the stats and just the size, athleticism, it was a beatdown. It wasn't even close. When Florida went against Texas and their good offensive line, we saw what happened there. It was a total destruction, an embarrassing blowout. So I just don't think I think Florida played better towards the end of the year, but the reason they played better towards the end of the year than they played against Miami is because they didn't play an offensive line as good as Miami's. So that's my view of the situation. What are the comments saying here, Pete? Oh, like and subscribe, by the way, to the show. Appreciate you, Hassan, making sure we stay on point.
Sorry, getting texts from NFL people.
Sorry. So sorry. Ask him who looks draftable on this UF line. I think Caleb Banks, draftable player. That was a boon for them when he came back. But this is a player that Miami faced week 1. It was not like Caleb Banks was out for that game.
Big boy, what's his name? Not Caleb Jackson.
The 400-pounder?
Yeah, no, he's
gone, right?
Yeah, but he's a Senior Bowl guy, Cam Jackson. Yeah, that's my boy Stan's client. He's a Senior Bowl guy, and he's supposed to get drafted mid-rounds, actually. They really like him a lot.
Well, he didn't do anything against the Canes.
No, but that's what I'm saying. He didn't have a good game against the Canes. But NFL-wise, big body, and I don't think was in great shape throughout the year.
Shamar James, is he a Senior Bowl guy?
I'm not sure.
He's an NFL guy, the linebacker they lost. So they lost guys. I think that's part of what people are missing with the Gators in Miami is that the Gators lost players, and they didn't add players. So we're so he
declared. So
so he's gone. So it seemed like when Lagway started getting going, you're going to see a huge push in the portal and in recruiting. You saw it in recruiting. Dallas Wilson's trying to get qualified now. Who knows with that circus? That's been a circus. I have low hopes for that player just because too much noise around him. Vernell Brown's going to be really good for them. They got Eugene Wilson back. The Sturdivant guy from UCLA, the receiver, he's pretty good. He's a solid player. I think he could have a good year for him. 3-star portal guy. So they got some guys at receiver that were able to jump on the momentum of Lagway. But overall, the infusion of talent that you thought was going to happen based on their finish hasn't happened if you really objectively sit down and look at the roster.
Juan Manuel asking, does Miami have any interest in the Notre Dame transfer portal O-line? They've lost 3 of them here over the last 24 hours. Yeah,
so we just did a segment on Group Chats Football Live, which, by the way, Pete, pull it up here. We do a show now, been doing it for about a month, we're already over 1,000 subscribers. Appreciate all you guys listening to this show that subscribed over there. That thing's been rolling. we basically break down all the movement. So we're getting a much better feel for college football as a whole by doing this show every day, kind of keeping track of the player movement in the portal. Now we're shifting more towards recruiting, coaching. That's why I'm so attuned to Florida's transfer portal moves, because
every time we talk about anything, we did one on Harrison Bailey the other day, the backup quarterback, who we actually like as a pickup for them. It's weird how he hasn't really worked out anywhere else, but yeah, he's the only one that we've really talked about.
Yeah, we talk about every portal move, and it's usually Gator players leaving, right? We talk more about Gator guys going to other teams, other good SEC teams.
Jonte Cook, we thought that he was going to end up there for a while too, the receiver.
Yep. So there hasn't been a lot of action towards the Florida Gators in the portal, but we know that because we run the group chat sports, group chat football live every day. We go live. And you get these little videos, 5-minute videos, just about everything that goes on. So if you want to catch up on the comings and goings, we're going to shift to recruiting. We're going to keep you updated on recruiting nationally, as well as spring football, who's doing well, just kind of becoming more of a complete college football fan. Tune into group chats, sports, group chat football live every day. We'd appreciate you. Go ahead and like and subscribe. It really helps us out to build that channel. So appreciate that. And that's the question on Notre Dame. We just did a video on Notre Dame and some of the players that have entered the portal there. They're starting center, Pat Coogan, right guard, Rocco Spindler. Both those guys have a lot of starting experience. Notre Dame has a ton of guys, some young players pushing for playing time. That's why you do have 2 starters on a playoff team that ended up going to the portal. It's because they're feeling the pressure from young guys to play, and they know they can get a bag here as late entries. That bidding might get too rich for the Canes, because I just suspect, there's so many teams, USC, Oklahoma, Michigan might be in play for, at least for Spindler, who's from Detroit. I could see those teams really pushing for a veteran offensive line addition, while we have a veteran offensive line already in place. So I don't see us being huge players, but I'd never count out Miami to investigate a talented offensive lineman. But I think
if this was a year from now, it'd be a slam dunk.
Next year, I think there's going to be a lot of action in recruiting. I think Miami's had some misses here in terms of the offensive line recruiting. Once you got past the Coopers and the McCoys and the Mauanoas, there's been more misses lately. Markel Bell was a good get. He might be out next year because of the JUCO eligibility. Hopefully he gets some more time because of the Pavia injunction. But we've had some misses on the offensive line. So I think the goal here and some of the momentum is towards one of the better offensive line classes in the country this year in high school, and then the portal. So if this was 2026 portal season, I think Miami would be all over both these guys.
New King God asking, what are your expectations for Miami backup D tackles Artavius Jones and Josh Horton? I think it's kind of a similar story with both. Obviously, Jones is younger than Horton, but Jones just got to get his body right. He was a young guy coming in here, a lot of ability, but that first year for young interior linemen can be a bit of a transition sometimes. I think he's a guy who has a lot of weight room strength, and he's got to translate that over now to the field. But I'm excited about him. He needs to take a big leap here, because Justin Scott was obviously ahead of him, because Scott was in that rotation there. And then Horton got to be healthy, but there's a reason we say this a lot, D. Guys who don't transfer, it's a two-way street. You either see the writing on the wall and you understand that there's guys who they've brought in to replace you or to push you, and you either say, I'm going to compete, or I'm going to go look for another opportunity, or you just decide to walk out the building. Horton still being here says something to me.
Yeah, and he played towards the end of the year. So Horton's a guy, when you go to the facility and you see him, you're like, wow. I mean, height, width, looks the part, not carrying a lot of bad weight. He can move. Now, the problem is when you go to the facility, he's usually working out on the side because he's been injured. Was usually Nick's. So with him, it's all about getting him on the field. He got on the field towards the end of last year. I think that's a sign that they expect him. And just talking to people, I know that they expect him to really be more of a factor this next year. Maybe take a jump similar to what Anthony Moten did this season. You see that from Horton, who's a really, really physically talented guy. He looks the part on the field. He looks how you want those defensive tackles to look. Artavius Jones, another guy super talented. I'm honestly kind of freakish in some ways with his power and his athleticism. With him, it's more development. He's a young guy. He's coming from the country. Didn't play against the best competition. I think he's still learning the game. Different way than like a Justin Scott, who was a 5-star, had gone to the Army game, was a little more polished when he came in. I think Artavius Jones is just a little bit further behind, coming from the Panhandle. And That'll be a slower burn. But once it gets going, super talented, really explosive and powerful. The physical package was as advertised. He just needs a little bit more polish. But of those two, I'd say Horton is more likely to be that fourth defensive tackle. But that's why they have spring. You got to see who's the man.
You better love somebody. Says Canes need another or one good wide receiver. Yeah, that's talking to some people. That's kind of the sentiment. That's right up there as item number one, I think, moving forward.
Yep. I think wide receiver one is the biggest need on this team right now. You got Carson Beck in place now. You got the pieces. CJ Daniels much more of a number two from what I've seen. We'll see if he gets his speed back from Liberty. Then maybe he's more of your number one receiver, 1,000-yard receiver. Liberty took a step back at LSU, but was kind of a possession guy for him. Had an injury. He's had surgery on his, I want to say on his foot since the offseason. Since he landed at Miami. So we'll see. Hopefully he recovers in time for spring. And then we'll see how he responds to that surgery. Hopefully the lingering injury that slowed him down at LSU is gone. And you can see that speed, that high yards per catch that you saw at Liberty that dropped precipitously when he got to LSU. Bleed
Orange and Green saying, hoping Pancake doesn't hop in the spring portal. Big few months for him. I mean, he's got to take that next step. You know, we've said for now 2 seasons that, you know, obviously it was a tough adjustment in terms of the speed of the game compared to what he saw in high school to this level. And it's now or never, really. He's got to make it happen, right? So he's going to have opportunities here in the spring. A lot of guys coming back, but we saw last year, if a guy's good enough to play, they will figure out a way to get him in that mix. We saw with Markel Bell. So if Samson can take a leap here and show that he belongs, then he's gonna play. Then he's gonna figure it out. If not, then we'll see what happens.
Yeah, I agree with you, Pete. I think this spring is huge for Samson. He's been developed. He's a good worker. He's been in the program. So you want to see that hard work be rewarded, both in terms of his performance improving and then getting more playing time. He did get a lot of playing time last spring. I think ultimately what hurt Samson getting on the field was Markel Bell just coming in and being so good. And then thankfully there was mostly good health on the offensive line. You did lose Rivers for a bit, but you had Markel Bell step up. So we'll see, man, with Samson. I think him and Tommy Kinsler are two of the guys you really are watching closely in spring, because I don't see Markel Bell taking a step back. I think he's going to continue to elevate.
Hassan saying, I'm hearing Carnell Tate from Ohio State's going to hit the portal. Would he be a take?
You know, I haven't talked to anybody specifically about Carnell Tate. He's still in the portal.
I've heard not in the portal.
They're still not in the portal. I'm sorry. I've heard the rumors just like everybody else. Having gone back and watched him, I remember in high school, and I've seen him, you know, watching Ohio State games. And I went back and actually studied him because I wanted to just see what he would look like if he got into the portal. I think he'd be a very, very interesting fit. He wants to be a number one receiver. We need a number one receiver. He has experience. He's been developed well. You know, was productive this year, over 700 yards. So it's not like he's one of these 5 stars just sitting on the bench waiting for a chance. He's played. He just, as a wide receiver, this often happens. He's looking at Jeremiah Smith and saying, I don't know if I like being Robin to Batman. I want my own show.
Yeah, but I don't want to take him if it means that'll make Jeremiah not want to come, man. I don't know.
Yeah, listen, I think if there was a shot at Jeremiah, this staff would go to the ends of the earth to get him, but Jeremiah Smith's not in the portal. Neither is Carnell Tate. In this hypothetical, Carnell Tate jumps in the portal, and I think he would be a pretty good fit with he's not the fastest guy in the world. He's not going to be a freak athlete for you, but he knows how to play the position. He's been well coached. From Chicago originally, spent time at IMG, good route runner, good hands, size is there. I think he's someone that if you elevated his role, he could be 1,000-yard receiver for you and would be a nice one with CJ Daniels as 2. And then JoJo Trader is that wild card. Maybe JoJo Trader makes that jump to become a premier player. He has it in him. Ronald Fox said, every fan should donate a kidney if we can get number 4. Here's the only thing you need to do as a fan. Pete, cue it up. You already know where I'm going with this. I'm just pulling up the portal rankings. Obviously, Jeremiah Smith would put this whole thing into a different stratosphere. But looking at the portal rankings, we're going to get into this probably a little more on tomorrow's podcast. But Miami's number 5 in the portal rankings. Top 5 on both On3 and 247. You got the number 1 quarterback, number 1 overall player, number 2 cornerback who might be moved up to number 1 on the re-rankings. Just listen to 247 talk about Xavier Lucas. They were talking about him as potentially being the number 1 corner once they re-rank him here in a couple weeks. Zechariah Poyser, number 2 safety. David Blade, number 2 defensive tackle. Currently a top 10 corner. Ethan O'Connor, number 3 corner on On3. Charles Brantley, number 7 corner on On3. Alex Bauman, the top 10. Tight end, CJ Daniels, 4-star receiver transfer. You get guys of that quality, the second best quality in a transfer class behind Oregon. Costs money. The only thing you guys can do, we all can do as fans to help the product on the field is to support Miami's official NIL collective, Canes Connection. So go to canesconnection.com/CIS. I'm dropping the link here in the chat. canesconnection.com/CIS. Make sure you get that CIS in there. That'll get you access to private Zooms that I'm doing on recruiting. Now we're shifting into 26 recruiting. I am tentatively scheduled to do a private Zoom next Thursday. So basically a week from today, we'll be doing a private Zoom with all the latest insider information on the class of 26. That'll be kind of like a primer. Hey, these are the guys we like. These are the guys that we're not really after that you hear in the media. These are the guys we're actually after. Things I can't say as clear on this public forum where it can get clipped and sent to kids and coaches. This is going to be.
That's where he's dropping the Jeremiah Smith update.
The Jeremiah Smith update will be on that canesconnection.com/CIS Zoom. So use the link in the description or in the chat, canesconnection.com/CIS. Sign up at any level. You'll get access to the Zoom, and every little bit helps to support this team and make sure that we continue to have top 5 portal classes and get back to what this class hopes to be a top 5 high school recruiting class as well.
New King God says, be careful. Wisconsin's looking for tampering. We're kidding. We're messing around.
Yeah, I mean, there's not really anything worth tampering for on Wisconsin anyways. You know, Xavier Lucas voluntarily entered the portal. Now is a Miami Hurricane. And I don't know what else on Wisconsin is too interesting at the moment. So we'll see.
I wish Miami would have had Ricardo Hallman as well.
Yeah, that would have been a good pickup. I know you did you get, was he an FRM guy?
Yeah, he was.
So remember you saying
Frank? That's Frank Gore's son.
Son?
Yeah, his stepson. But yeah,
okay.
So he that's why I was always like, man, he wanted to be recruited in Miami coming out. So I wish could have made that happen. But
yeah, no, 100%. That would have helped. Any bit would have helped in the secondary this year, but I'm not sure Hallman would have played that much on this next secondary just because of the length that's been added to the room. Question here from Kyle. He's asking, we need a pod breaking down the young 7 receivers, what 3 emerge. We're going to be breaking down all the positions leading up to spring. We'll have our own kind of dedicated episode to all of them, plus the portal. But just, in this question here, it's about Ray, Joseph, Chance Robinson, JoJo Trader, Josh Moore, Malachi Tony, and Dalen Upshaw. The freshman I haven't seen yet. I heard Josh Moore looks really, really good. Some of us said he's making like Calvin Johnson catches.
I'm all over him.
Yeah, not saying he's gonna be Calvin Johnson, guys, when you hear it. I'm just saying these people are making, you know how people are when they play football, always throwing out comparisons. They're saying this guy's making just unreal, freaky catches.
Look who's saying, how people are throwing out comparisons.
Well, I always give it 5.
Isn't that ironic?
Because I always give it 15 disclaimers. I always give it 15 disclaimers when I say it because people take it the wrong way. But you know how it is when people are out there on the field like, man, this guy looks like Calvin Johnson.
This he's already dropped. He just dropped the Calvin Johnson.
There it is. Rename the pod.
That is crazy.
Rename the pod. We got 1,100 on here listening to me make that comp. But, I'll talk about the 3 here that I've seen, which is Ray, Chance, and JoJo. With Chance, he's got to play. He's been injured. Every time I go to practice, he's injured. Great looking kid. I mean, the guy looks like an NFL receiver physically, but he's been nicked up. So you got to see him play before we can really know what we have there. I think definitely has the physical, frame to compete next year. Have to see how he plays. I liked him in high school. Ray, it's all about just there's a couple things with Ray. I haven't seen, he has a great kid. We interviewed him last year. He was amazing, super smart. The whole thing with the number, some people thought wearing that number slowed him down because he didn't have his the swag when he was wearing 35 on the punt returns. But I think, I don't know if he got too big. He doesn't seem as dynamic as I know he has been in the past. I don't know if he's dealing with an injury, but just there's a little bit of lack of pop with him that I wonder if he maybe bulked up too much. We'll see how he looks in the offseason, but I've seen him be faster, more dynamic than what we saw last year. That's something to watch. And then hands-wise, he's a running back that switched to receiver and has been working hard. I'll talk about Carr also, Kyle. But with Ray, he's worked hard, but he hasn't, like Restrepo, when Restrepo switched from running back to receiver his junior year of high school, it was like immediate. He was making plays. Ray has been more of a slow progression, just those natural kind of instinctive receiver things. We'll see if that comes to him. But I think that's something to watch there, just how he moves and whether he can get that slot receiver. There's just that feel. Malachi Tony is coming for that spot, and he's someone I know has that feel at receiver. So we'll see there. Yes, Nikar also, Kyle. He's a guy that's made plays every time I've been at practice going back to spring. Raw, nicked up. You saw him on a deep ball from Emory, I believe, in the bowl game, fell down. So he's still getting that contact balance and that strength, becoming more of a grown-up at that position, just body maturation, mental maturation as far as knowing the playbook. But he's someone I liked when I saw him in spring. Same as JoJo Trader. They were always making plays. In camp, they were behind more guys. Sam Brown is here. They were a little nicked up. But they've made a lot of plays in practice. JoJo's done it in games. Nikar, we'll see. I think he's somebody that really needs a big spring. But I like him. I think he can be a player. He'd be one I would bet on, but you got to see it in spring.
D, I just got a text from our friend Chance Mack. He says, so we have Tebow and Calvin Johnson.
Chance Mack, the most prolific Spaces listener, podcast listener, group chat participator on the planet. I don't know how he finds time to keep up his fitness routine and raise his family, but salute to Chance Mack, one of the best, one of the Canes greats, and the man. Been trying to get him on the show for years. He never wants to do it, but he listens to everyone. I don't know why. You're
scaring him off with these comparisons.
305 Shaman. Should Ray go back to running back? Honestly, I've heard worse ideas. You know, if it's not working for him in the slot, I think he'll get a chance in the slot. But if it doesn't for whatever reason, Miami needs a fifth running back. They probably look to the portal after the spring for that. But there's no rule says you can't move people. You've seen a lot of guys move to running back. You saw DJ Dallas make that move for the Canes. Khalil Mulling, someone who did it at Michigan, going from linebacker to running back, but very effective. DeCarlo Donaldson, CJ Donaldson, moved from tight end to running back. Now he's the running back for the Ohio State Buckeyes, transferring from West Virginia. So you've seen moves like that. The running back move I want to see, and I've been saying it, is if we can get the tight end position a little stronger. Maybe Brock Schott and Luka Gobert look good in spring. Maybe look a little advanced. Maybe you bring in someone else from the portal, maybe both. Alex Bauman does this thing. If we can get Elijah Lofton more snaps in the backfield, I think he can be a monster. He's 6'1", 240. His body type is more of a running back, fullback than a tight end just because of the length. You could use him as a lead blocker, and he's very, very good running the ball, deceptively good. I saw him in spring last year. We were down on running backs and moved him there. He ran unbelievably. I think he's a 5+ yard per carry guy in the ACC running the ball. And then, of course, when he lines up a receiver, the mismatches are crazy because he's a true receiver. He's not just like, a running back that'll catch if you throw it to him. He's a legit receiver that can run routes, that can one-hand it, that can make plays. So huge mismatch opportunities already with Lofton, but I think it doubles when you put him in the backfield.
Good question here from Rich Andrews. He says, is Miami's wide receiver room as currently constructed better than Georgia 2024 room?
That bar is extremely low. I would say, yeah.
I would say that when I first saw the question, I thought he was asking which room is better for this next year, because Georgia obviously brought in Noah Thomas and Branch, so those guys are a little bit more proven, but Branch still has some growth as a receiver, I would say.
Yeah, that Georgia 24 room. I went back and watched Carson Beck's film. I think pretty much the whole season, his offensive snaps, including the running snaps. I was shocked at number one, how bad Georgia's run game was, considering what it usually is. And number two, how bad that wide receiver room. I mean, it was awful. They dropped contested catches. They dropped wide open catches. They had no juice whatsoever. Arian Smith had some speed, but he was a drop machine, and he wasn't that quick laterally. So it was just an awful, awful unit. One of the worst I've seen at a program as good as Georgia. Miami's not where they need to be right now. I think CJ Daniels is basically what Kobe Young was for them last year, which was their best receiver until Kobe Young had his issue with the domestic violence charge. And JoJo Trader's more talented physically than what they had over there. We'll see if he can turn that into production. But if you're the Miami Hurricanes, you don't just want to say, hey, if a couple things go right, we're better than Georgia. You want to make sure of that and get some guys in the portal. I think they will. Carson Beck's going to be an easier sell than Emory Williams. Georgia themselves have done a really good job in the portal, improving what they were last year. They added Noah Thomas from Texas A&M, that big body they needed, because Carson Beck, he had no help on these contested catches. If it was 50-50, it was really 20-80 for the other team. So Noah Thomas will help Georgia. Zechariah Branch, who we recruited, he'll add some dynamic play to their passing game. I think they'll be better, but we will need to be better. But even right now, as we sit, we're still, I'd say, better than what Georgia had last year, which was not anything.
Yeah, without a doubt. Juan Manuel wants to know when we're gonna do a wrestling only show. That's not me, man. That's leave that to Mike and D.
Stay tuned. I'm working on it. It won't be on this channel, but we're working on it. We're 1,300 on right now. It's amazing. Pete can't figure out the phenomenon of when we talk wrestling, our numbers go up on the Wednesday show.
They go up, man. It's wild.
Every single time. So we'll talk about it. I'm excited about the product, where it's heading into the Royal Rumble. But we won't talk about it on this show. B. Correa saying Ray Ray's looking like he's going nowhere fast. A lot of energy for nothing. It's strange. And you're talking about going nowhere fast. You're talking about like on the field. The guy is a great kid and a great worker. So I usually bet on guys like that, as opposed to people who, have the off the field stuff. It's just a question of he's got to figure out. He's got to figure out, what weight am I best at? What do I do well on the field? Where's my strengths? Do I need to be a running back full time and put some weight on? Or do I lose weight and become a little faster? Or am I at the right weight and I'm just doing certain things wrong technically? Huge spring for Ray Ray. Before, he was not really competing for the starting slot because we had an All-America, right, first teamer, a banner guy at slot receiver. Now you're talking about a freshman coming in to compete in Malachi Tony, competing against Ray Joseph. Malachi Tony's not the biggest. He's a freshman, so his body's not going to be as developed. So he's kind of got the opposite problem that Ray has. We'll see if he has enough body armor to handle what he's going to be dealing with on Green Tree. But that's going to be one of the most intriguing battles of the spring, is Malachi Tony, Ray Joseph as those pure slot receivers. By the way, there's no rule that says you can't have Dalen Upshaw playing the slot. You can't put Trader in the slot. You can't put Nikar in the slot. We might not have your classic 5'9", 5'10" slot receiver. Maybe you have a bigger player that can separate quickly and cause mismatches in the slot.
This isn't a comparison. I don't do the comparisons the same way D does, but because they're not the same player at all. It's the same position. And just looking at a career arc recently, Braxton Berrios did not get off to a hot start in his Miami career. People kind of forget the first 3 years of his career were not all that great, right? And I think he's a guy, an example, I will make the comparison, hard workers, very, very hard workers, right? Live, sleep in that building, do everything they're supposed to do. But someone who came in with a lot of hype and didn't necessarily right off the bat hit the ground running, had some good moments early, but did not put it all together until his senior year.
Yeah, I think another one, weight, right? He got really big and strong.
Yeah.
He didn't really, to me, get into his ideal weight till he got to the pros. He was, I'm not sure about this, Pete. Maybe you have more knowledge on this. It seemed to me he was his lightest when he got to the NFL.
He was. I was going to mention that too, but 100% it was true. He was jacked up at his sophomore, junior years in Miami.
I think that's something Restrepo probably should do as well. I thought the weight was good for Restrepo at UM because he really is
he was a workhorse for Miami.
And he's a running back. Like, he lives off running people over and kind of using his strength to be bigger than his height. It worked for him in Miami. Now that the players are bigger at the next level, he's not going to be able to shed tackles as easily in the secondary. Maybe he leans more into his quickness, into his separation, and loses some weight. That'll be an interesting one to watch too. Restrepo, I'm curious what he's going to weigh at the Senior Bowl. Maybe he shows up at the Senior Bowl similar to his playing weight, loses weight for the combine. You've seen that, Pete, I'm sure, a million times.
We remember we spoke to him, and he told us his diet wasn't necessarily on point, which, again, like, he gets it. He starts eating healthy now, and he'll lean up and be ripped for the time now, which is this draft process.
Yeah, that was a shocker to me. So Restrepo, just to show you with these kids, their diet, Restrepo is known for being the guy that takes care of his body the best. You see the results on the field, his physical improvements, his ability to, for the most part, stay healthy. And he was an All-America, right? Despite not having the Julio Jones physical traits. So if you're talking about who takes care of their body the best on the team, the name that's always given to me is Restrepo. And he was talking about how he goes to the training room, he gets his massages, all that. And we talk about diet, and he's out there. He says he eats Taco Bell. So it's like, it's a
Taco Bell and Pop Subs. That's his rotation.
And he's probably on the good side of taking care of his body. You can imagine people that are not as mature, younger, not as advanced as Restrepo, maybe more talented, don't have to. So there is so much room to improve with all these guys with their diet. So that's something to keep in mind with a lot of these players too, is, man, you could tell when someone really invests in their body. Isaiah Horton, who's now at Alabama, from 1 year to the next, first spring practice, and those of you who listen to the show every day, got over 1,400 on the live. Appreciate everybody like and subscribe to the show. But those who listen to the show every day, even going back to March and last spring, the first name that I mentioned, and you mentioned, Pete, in spring practice was, hey, Isaiah Horton looks different. Number 2 looks like a new man. And it carried over to the season, which ended up being a breakout season for him. Now he's getting paid a lot of money to play football for the Crimson Tide. Wish he was still a Cane. Maybe he would have stayed if Carson Beck was in the picture. I'm just speculating. That's not information. That's just kind of me spitballing. But you usually could tell who's worked on their body. And that's going to be a big tell the first day of spring, and we'll report on it because we're going to be there saying, hey, so-and-so looks different. Maybe Ray is the one.
And I'm sure we're going to get a lot of comments that say, well, we need a new nutritional staff and all that if these guys can't get their bodies right. But it really is like these guys have to take it seriously individually. When they're in the building, they can eat all the healthy food that they want there. But when they step outside of there and they get in their cars on the way home, if they're stopping at McDonald's, that's on them. You know what I'm saying? So that's my experience with working with these guys, right? And knowing how they are. Get them the meal plans and all that. And they're still, gotta feed that urge a little bit.
And listen, the hard part of it is I'm almost 40 years old. When I was that age, and I was definitely not this kind of athlete, I was eating terrible. So I'm sure a lot of you guys were as well. So it's hard to get that 40-year-old maturity in the 20-year-old brain. You want that to happen. When it does happen, it leads to some pretty good results. So hopefully the nutrition goes up this year. Great point from Rich Andrews. He's saying we've been blessed with some hardworking slot receivers, Braxton Berrios, Mike Harley, ex Restrepo, nice little run. All those guys were very productive. All those guys were more productive than their recruiting ranking. Berrios was a 4-star player, but he's still in the NFL. He's obviously outperformed that. Harley was a low 4-star who really kind of emerged as a senior. We were one of the first.
West Virginia.
Yeah, we were the first website really hyping Harley up. He ends up being one of the more prolific receivers in Miami history. Xavier Restrepo, I think he was the second lowest rated player in Miami's class. All-America, hanging in the Raptors.
But Mike Harley, another one with through his first 2 seasons, 9 receptions his first year and 21 his second year. No touchdowns. So,
and that's, by the way, something you hear about this class is they are hard workers, especially at the receiver position. That's something I've heard talking to sources, that these guys came in ready to work. Josh Moore, someone that always worked with a trainer, worked hard, very focused. Dalen Ushaw, that's his reputation over in Alabama. Malachi Toney, talked to Coach Duaso. There's people that have been around him, Steve-O, people that have worked around him that we know, friends of the Canes Inside Show that work with him on the Raw 7-on-7 team. They all say this guy is all about football. Doesn't have a lot of vices. His vices or his hobby is playing football. So you project good things with guys like that.
What else we got here, D? Anything else you want to hit on other than the comments and questions?
A question from Juan Manuel about will Gerard Pringle, the running back, return punts and kicks? Why hasn't punt kick return been a strength? So many dynamic athletes. I think starting with Pringle, I think punt return maybe. He did return punts for touchdowns this year as a senior. I think kickoff probably fits his athleticism better. He's more of a straight line guy. Running backs usually more on the kickoff return side. I think that's where you see him. I think he will be an impact player there. I think in general, I went back and watched Pringle's highlights. He is somebody I think is going to have a major, major impact. People aren't talking enough about how good this guy is going to be. I was a Chris Johnson fan. I think Chris Johnson is going to have success at SMU. I think it's going to click for him. But Gerard Pringle, I think, is going to come in readier to play, more ready to play, because he's got that running back build already. Not big, but he's built like a running back. He's strong, squatty, he can handle contact. He's got that 10-4 speed, 4-4, 4-3 speed, and just a little more efficient with his cuts at this age than Chris Johnson. Just a little bit further along as a freshman. I think it's going to work out for Chris Johnson at SMU. I think we're going to go watch some of SMU's games and say, how do we let this guy get away? He's cranking 70-yard touchdowns. But Gerard Pringle, I think, is going to make a much more immediate impact and do some of the things that we were hoping that Chris Johnson was going to do. Just more natural at running back, more advanced. Kyle saying to the Rashard Smith led the nation in kickoff returns last season, 2023. Yeah, we've had some success at return. Last year, we were a very good returning team. This year, not so good. So it just, kind of goes up and down. I think Ray was pretty average at returns. Hopefully he can improve there. Kickoff return was.
And returning is a skill. It's not just, throw the fast guy out there.
Oh, yeah. And there's blocking involved too. There's 10 other guys on the field. So there's coordination there. I think it's half recruiting, half coaching, right? You got to recruit athletes who not only are returners but are just athletes on coverage units, on return units that can run and hit and are physical. and you got to coordinate them. So, Coach Coulter, he had a really great call with that fake punt to Elijah Lofton in the bowl. We'll see what he can do with some of these guys, but I'm excited to see the special teams develop. And here's the name I'm going to put on everybody's radar for the return units. We talked about Pringle. I think he'll be in that mix for kickoff return. But if we're talking about punts and kickoffs and just in general returning, he's not here right now. He's the only player in the class that didn't enroll early because the school didn't let him. But we'll see him here in the summer. Bryce Fitzgerald, Columbus, was the best returner in Miami this year. In South Florida, really, he was the best returner overall. Smooth, natural, catches it.
You see it on the interception returns too.
Yeah, I could see him being one of those guys this year, day one impact player as a returner.
Agreed. Big time.
Elgin saying, what do they know at On3? It's just their opinion. My opinion is different. My opinion is different too, Elgin. That's why we do this. But listen, it's January 23rd. So it's going to be a lot of opinions from January until they're playing football here in August, late August, Labor Day. So, a lot of opinions until then. Right now, I think their opinion's wrong. And I think their opinion neglects the fact that other teams are adding in the portal. Florida has not. And that Florida really did not look up to par against Miami in the trenches.
Yeah, it seemed like what they were saying was pretty much based on how the season ended, like we said, and not taking into account what's happened this offseason.
By the way, there's a couple of apparel plugs. If you want to get this hoodie, Canes Insight, it's like this is a champion hoodie. Getting me through this winter. It's cold, it's rainy, it's wet out here. We got our own shop, Canes Insight. So you can get a Canes Insight t-shirt. We got a bunch of shirts to remind UF fans how bad they are. We did about 3 shirts after UF beat the pants off the Florida Gators. So we got the 41-17 shirt. We got Gator Tears. We got a bunch of shirt designs, just making fun of the Florida Gators. You might want to rock. But really, I like this sweater. That's why I wore it today, because it is cold and rainy in Miami. It's usually not this weather. It's like Seattle weather. Not a fan. Getting ready for the sun to come back out. But right now, you got to rock the hoodie. And this champion hoodie with the Canes Insight logo is really, really high quality. You can get that at the Canes Insight shop. The link's in our description on the YouTube channel. Links on the website. Pete's going to drop the link, I'm sure, in this chat. So get some gear. Get some gear there. And what else you got, Pete?
Miami HTS.
So Miami HTS, the Hurricane team store. I want to talk specifically about something they got going with the baseball team, right? So baseball is up and running. They're practicing. I will most likely be out at practice sometime tomorrow. I think they have an open practice. I want to say at 4:35. I'll check that out, but I will be there. But if you want to meet the team, you want to meet this new team, a lot of new faces, a lot of new members of this team. Here's your chance. This Sunday, January 26th, 3 to 4 p.m. at the Hurricane Team Store, Thesis Hotel in Coral Gables. You get autographs from 2025 Canes baseball student athletes, Daniel Cuvée, maybe the best slugger in the ACC, future major leaguer, I believe. Brian Walters, flamethrower, closer last year, potentially starter this year. And Robert Evans, left-handed starter from Georgia State, guy we're really excited about. Meet all 3 of those student athletes at the Hurricane Team Store, January 26th, Sunday, 3 to 4 p.m. Plus, you can shop for all your Hurricane gear. Don't miss this chance to connect with the players. 3 to 4 p.m. Sunday at the Hurricane Team Store. Use promo code INSIGHT20 at the store. You get 20% off your first item. They got the Canes Insight button right there at the cashier. You tell them Canes Insight, they'll hit the button, boom, 20% off your Canes baseball gear, whatever other gear you want to get. MiamiHTS.com if you want to be shopping. If you're out of state, you're out of the city, MiamiHTS.com. Just use promo code INSIGHT20. They'll take care of you. 20% off. Rich Andrews saying, I still have my Coley swag hate. It's beat from all the use. Yeah, that Coley swag hat was awesome. That was like it's so funny how these signing days work. So I'm pulling this up because I've been looking back at old signing classes, just going down memory lane. People have the picture of the Coley swag hat. I don't know if they sell it at the Miami Hurricane Team Store. Hopefully they do.
I think that hat's been out of rotation for years now.
Yeah, it's like a Nike hat, right?
I don't know. It wasn't. It was like it was some other brand, but I don't even know if they make it anymore.
What's so funny?
That's actually a New Era hat.
So that 2013 class, it just reminds you of how crazy recruiting is. I remember this distinctly because when Coley chose Miami at the end of the day, we've been getting our butts kicked on every single player in that class. We lost out on Matthew Thomas, who ended up not turning into anything, but he looked like all world, right, at Booker T. One of the best players I've seen in high school at that level. He was a 5-star player, signed with Florida State. There we go.
Look at the headline on the Yahoo story.
There it is. So if you saw this announcement, you'll remember it because, again, we were getting our butts kicked on every single player that year. It was so disappointing. Matthew Thomas, the best linebacker in the country, goes to Florida State, ended up sucking. It ended up really not being much of an impact player at all, which is shocking if you saw how good he was in high school. Denver Kirkland, who actually ended up being the better player in that package deal. Miami didn't really handle that recruitment well. He goes to Arkansas, ends up being an NFL player, ends up being better than Matthew Thomas. We kind of told him no, but we lost that battle because we were on him too late. And we lost Alex Collins. That battle went sideways on us. He goes to Arkansas, the late Alex Collins. RIP to him.
That was one of my bad moments as a recruiting insider.
Oh, yeah, you were hyping him up that he was going to Miami. Ends up going to
Miami. Thought he was, then he goes on that show, and the fateful flip happened, I guess.
Oh, that was brutal. So I mean, again, RIP Dallas Collins, but that was a big loss. So we were losing Janard Bostwick, who ended up not doing anything. He goes to Florida. So Miami was losing every single recruiting battle. Mario Cristobal was actually on this was when Mario Cristobal was at Miami under Golden for like 2 weeks. He was part of this class. But here's the funny thing. So when I go back and pull up the recruits, Artie Burns was the highest rated player in the class. First round pick. That worked out. Stacey Coley, he ended up being a good player. Certainly productive for Miami. Never quite what you hoped he'd be, but he was productive, gets drafted in the NFL. Al-Quadin Muhammad, the next highest rated guy in the class. He's playing now for the Detroit Lions after being out of the pros for a couple of years. Didn't get see the best of him because he was playing in a bad scheme. The year that we switched to the Manny Diaz defense, he was ineligible, which was a complete. We don't talk about that enough. That team could have been amazing if Jermaine Grace and Al-Quadin Muhammad were able to play. But Bo Sandland, who's a higher rated guy in this class, was terrible for Miami. He goes to like South Dakota or something like that, Montana State or something like that.
It was Montana State, yeah.
Ends up getting drafted by the Panthers. Kevin Olson, we thought was going to be the great quarterback. He stunk. Corn Elder's a pro. Jamal Carter ended up being a pro after Coach Banda really helped him out. Stan Dobard, your boy from FRM. It's just funny going back and looking at this class. Jermaine Grace ended up playing some games in the pros. Really missed out on his last year because of that ineligibility. But if you go,
it was a fun era to follow recruiting. Those guys had some personalities on them.
But the funniest thing to me is when I look at this list and I say, who's the best NFL player from this list? The best NFL player from this list, hands down, Gus Edwards, running back out of Staten Island, out of the Shaolin. I remember the reason I'm laughing is because that day with the Coley swag hat, I'm thinking about the day. And the first person to commit was Gus Edwards. And everybody was like, all right, great. He picked us over FSU. Like mild happiness out of that. And then just rage about losing Matthew Thomas, about losing all these guys, Janard Bostwick. And those guys ended up doing nothing. Gus Edwards was the best NFL player by far in that class of the guys we got. He was the best NFL player pretty much of the guys that we were fighting for. And like, it was like no one even cared when he committed. So it's just funny looking back on these recruiting classes. Sometimes how you feel on signing day.
Couldn't even really bear the fruits of him.
Yeah, he went to Rutgers. Didn't do much at Rutgers. I think he reps the Canes in the pros. I've seen him wearing Miami stuff when he plays in the pros. But it's like, this is a hard thing to predict. I think star rankings have gotten way better. You look at the recruiting, the first round this year, most of those guys are going to be blue chip players that get drafted first round. I think it'll probably be the most blue chip heavy first round ever this year. So recruiting rankings have gotten better. But how you feel on signing day doesn't always correspond to what is best and what players are best. So that was just a trip down memory lane. Rich Andrews saying Derek Griffin. Yeah, Devontae Bond, another one.
This is a crazy stat. So Gus Edwards, his lowest yards per carry in his career was actually at Rutgers, 4.3. He was 5.1, 5.7, and 4.9 the other 3 years.
Yeah. I mean, he produced when he was here at times. He had that game against Virginia Tech where he ran wild, but then Duke had like 250 yards in that game too. Derek Huck saying, I remember that recruiting class vividly. Yeah, man, those were tough times. Raheem Loxley, we were relying on ourselves big time on signing day. But over 1,500 on. Again, appreciate everybody joining us. Like and subscribe to the show. We'll be keeping it going. Recruiting is about to really heat up. Like I said, I will be getting the scoop on recruiting in our class. I will tell you what I can tell you on this show. If you want the stuff I can't tell you on this show, canesconnection.com/CIS. Sign up to Miami's official NIL collective. Use that CIS link. You can see it on our website. You can see it in the description here. canesconnection.com/CIS. We'll have a private chat with everything you don't get on the show because I can't say it in public. Everything I can't say in public, you'll be getting on this show. Recruiting is about to really pick up. A lot of future Hurricanes in the mix. I think the buzz is it's going to be one of the best offensive line classes in America.
Yeah.
So we'll see if we can get that one done.
Jeremiah Smith news on that private chat as well. Sign up for Canes Connection, everyone. Go Canes. Like the video, subscribe to the channel. We'll see you guys tomorrow.
See you tomorrow.